Welcome to the Paradise Paradox. My name's Kurt Robinson. The other day we got the chance to interview Luke Rudkowski of We Are Change, wearechange.org. Known for his work in the 9/11 truth movement, he's also known as a revolutionary journalist, approaching powerful figures and asking them questions which you wouldn't normally hear on regular media outlets. In the interview, Luke mentions a drink called pulque, which is quite famous in Mexico, made from the same plant which produces tequila and mezcal. Luke wasn't exactly a fan. We'll hear more about that in a moment. Run the intro. All right, this is Kurt Robinson from the Paradise Paradox, and I'm out here with Luke Rudkowski out here in Guadalajara. So Luke is the founder of We Are Change, and currently his main project is Change Media University, which is a school of independent journalism for the internet. How's it going?
Amazing. I love Guadalajara. I love Mexico, the weather, the people, the food. And pulque, whatever you do, if you go to Mexico, do not drink the pulque. Unless you want a great experience, which I had last night with you guys. It was interesting. It was really fascinating to experience Mexico full on, face on. So I'm having a blast. You know, can't ask for anything else. Just had a great training seminar in Acapulco, Mexico, where we sat down with about 30, 40 people who want to get into promotion, into multimedia, into getting their word and message across as effectively as they can on the internet. And it was a really enriching experience. And now I'm just traveling around, experiencing Mexico, trying to get the best out of it and looking for the best stories that I could find.
Yep. So here in Mexico, I find there's kind of a spirit of freedom. You know, the Mexican national anthem goes something like "Warriors fighting for justice" and that sort of thing. Do you feel that spirit of freedom, that entrepreneurialism and resistance spirit here in Mexico?
I think the feeling of Mexico is really there's a big duality to it. Obviously, there's many systemic issues and problems here that keep people here oppressed. But the will and the power of the people is very independent. Very rarely do you see people begging for money, at least from my experiences so far. A lot of people rather sell you something than actually try to just be like, give me your money. So that's a totally different kind of point of view than I have from New York City and all of the United States, where people just ask you for money. Seeing a lot of people just being innovative, seeing a lot of people just doing their best to help other people and to service other people, and solving the problems within their small communities, whether it's a doctor next door that will give you the best kind of health care that you could possibly get for the best buck, or just someone who's willing to help you in any way, shape, or form, whether it's to clean your windshield, or get you the best food or show you around. And sometimes people don't even want anything. They just want a company and just want to be friends. So that kind of duality is also really amazing. But the people have been very chill, very relaxed. And I had nothing but great experiences. And I'm still learning so much about it. So I can't really give it a definitive answer on how Mexico really is, because I've only seen so little in a week or two, not even. Yeah.
Yep, for sure. So I wanted to ask you, when you started out as a journalist, I imagine it's been a long journey. You probably had to go through a lot of personal development in order to get to the stage that you are now. So what do you think the key traits are that make you the journalist that you are today?
That's a very good question. To me, it's about also having the right attitude, being open-minded. Your mind works best when it acts like a parachute. You open it up and you're safe from a lot of crap, and then free falling into the rabbit hole or into the depths of just propaganda. So I think having an open mind is one of the most important things that you can have doing this. Having no preconceived notions, asking questions, demanding answers, not making definitive statements and theories about what you personally believe, not letting your ego and pride get involved in that, and also just being humble and grateful for the opportunity you have to be able to, speak to people and share that information with other people. It should come from a point of view not from validation. It should come from a point of view from having intrinsic goals, not extrinsic goals. So you're not going after just, okay, this is me, I want my voice heard. Why are other people getting more views? Why are other people doing this? No, it should be about, okay, this is my personal journey. And that's what I've kind of seen it as. I had this kind of transgression where I did come from that kind of negative, low energy, validation seeking kind of point of view, where I was just screaming on a bullhorn trying to be heard, interrupting media outlets. But I find it most effective to be introspective, look within yourself, see the bad sides about yourself, try to deal with them as best as you can, look for feedback, get constant feedback from your friends and family and also the viewership, and take criticism critically. And not personally. There's a lot of things that people say out there that could really piss me off. But after, I think I've been doing this 13 years now. After 13, 14 years of doing this, I have a really tough skin. But if someone says something that, okay, you could have done this better, I will critically think, I'm like, okay, maybe he's right. So I have that open mind. I don't get bothered by anything. You could come up to me and insult me and the generation lines of my family, and you could talk about our noses and our hairlines and all, and my crappy voice, and I won't care. It won't matter to me. But if you say I could have done something better with asking different types of questions, I will really consider that. I really keep that open, and and I'm really just trying to do what I feel personally is not just right for me, to be a better person, but also to try to make the world a better place, and concentrate also on positive stories, on people coming together, seeking solutions, helping each other out outside of the corporate government kind of control grid that we live on. So I just gave you a lot. So there's really no definitive answer, except just try to be a good person, try to be humble, try to be happy, try to be positive, keep an open mind, and don't take criticism to heart too much. But if you think you could improve your work, definitely pay attention to it.
Yeah, great. Now, so obviously 9/11 was a huge event in your life and affected you on a personal level. But were there any other events in your personal life which made you start to question, like, I know there's more to life, I know there must be some kind of answers, or at least some more questions that we could be asking?
Yeah. When I was 14, 15, I was beat up by the police for no reason at all in Brooklyn, New York, pretty badly. Got bruises, a bloody mouth. I was not arrested. I never violated any crime. And after that incident, this was back in, 2003, 2004, I tried to get justice with it. But back in those days, we didn't have, the smartphones, the cameras that are everywhere. And then everyone told me, whether it was the judge, the review court, the police officers, the captain, they told us, your incident never happened. There's no witnesses. There's no proof. Even though I did have witnesses, even though there was a number of people who saw me getting beat up publicly in the street, bloodied publicly in the street by police for no reason at all. There was a number of people who saw that. But they told me there's no proof. And ever since then, it made me think there's more to what's happening in our system. Like, this can't just happen to people on an everyday basis without any accountability, without it being stopped in one way, shape, or form. So then it kind of brought me into this pathway of seeking responsibility and accountability for those who hurt the little guy. And back then I was, the little guy. And I got hurt, not as seriously as other people get hurt, but it made me go on this path of like, okay, we should fight for something more than just ourselves, because what happened to me is just one small incident that happens every single day. And we need to document this, and we need to show this to everyone, and we need to stop this at its tracks, because it's wrong. And that made me research the police state. That made me research 9/11 because of 9/11, we had this police state. We had this erosion of our civil liberties. We have this kind of brute force of authoritarianism right after 9/11 to protect us. And that was the result of it. And then 9/11, bam, you're deep down the rabbit hole of just going into everything that's happening all around the world. And it made me research and study everything that I could.
That's awesome. Yeah, so obviously you have a very distinctive style of journalism where you go up to people a lot of the time when they're not prepared, because it's hard to get an interview. It's hard to get people to agree to an interview because I know.
They never will give you an interview. Like, you could try to email them, you could try to message them, and that's what I did at first. I was like, Mr. Kissinger, can I please sit down for an interview with you? And they're like, who the hell are you? You're a nobody. You're online. Back, during this progression from like 2003 back right now when we're at 2015, only now are people recognizing the power of the internet. But then when people are like, yeah, I'm from the internet, I have a blog, people are like, get out of here. And even there's a big scam going on that people don't understand in the media industry. In the media industry, if you want an interview with someone in government, a senator, a congressman, or president, everything has to be scripted. You have to give them your questions beforehand. They have their answers pre-scripted. A lot of times, people like Condoleezza Rice, I was at a book signing with Condoleezza Rice, and she was giving a speech, and there was a Q&A session that was supposed to be random, picked out from the crowd. So the crowd wrote down their questions, and they gave it to Condoleezza Rice. And she was answering those questions and going through those questions. Later that day, she went on the Jon Stewart show. And on the Jon Stewart show, the same exact questions that were supposedly picked from the audience, Jon Stewart was throwing at her. So the questions were never picked from the audience. The questions that Jon Stewart was asking were never his own personal questions, even though Jon Stewart was known from the guy who was kind of going up against the Bush administration, going up against government. That's where he got his fame. Jon Stewart got his fame from going after them. But even Jon Stewart with Viacom and the major corporation that he works under, he's like, okay, you want to interview Condoleezza Rice? These are the questions you're going to ask, and you're not going to ask anything else. Here you go. And then he just plays the script, and then Condoleezza Rice has those questions memorized in her head and those answers memorized in her head, and it's all fake and scripted by all these top elites. So the company that manages Condoleezza Rice and Viacom make an agreement together. And they're like, okay, she has a book to sell. Damn, but we're going to work this out this way, and it's all fake, and it's all an illusion, and that's not real journalism in any way, shape, or form. So the only way you could really do that is by doorstepping them when they get out the cars, when they're walking, during public events where you just stand up and ask a question, during press conferences where you just have to crash it sometimes because they won't let you in there because they see the type of work that you're doing, and that doesn't go along their corporate line, that doesn't sell books. So it's like, you have to figure out a way to get out of the system, not participate with it. And that's what a lot of people face when they go into journalism school. They think about asking the hard questions. No, the reality is you're going to work a horrible job waking up for somebody when they tell you to wake up, doing what they want you to do, and everything is scripted, everything is fake by the top elites who run and control virtually everything because there's only 5 mega corporations that control 90% of all media, print, news, newspapers, photos, radio, television. 90% of that is controlled by 5 major conglomerates. 90. And that's why I created Change Media University, to show people, look, this is how you doorstep them. This is how you crash events. This is how you ask a question when you're not supposed to ask a question. And this is how you get answers.
Have you ever, I don't think I've ever seen you wear a disguise, but have you ever done that to try to get some questions in?
Those are, can't really talk about that publicly.
All right.
We did everything.
Okay.
From pretending to be icemen, like carrying ice with a towel into events, just sneaking into events. There's some stuff I won't get into greater detail with, but we went from virtually every aspect of it. But it comes to a point where it's like, it's so difficult. It's like, okay, it's not even worth it. So it's not, but there's other ways and approaches you can make. We just did it for fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And those are the private stories that I can't share, the fun stories of where we crashed events.
All right, we'll read that in your memoir in 20 or 30 years, hopefully.
Yes. I'm thinking about writing a book because there's so many things behind the scenes that people don't see and they don't understand. And it's really insane, just this whole journey. I mean, it's just beautiful and amazing, and it's also ugly and destructive, but it's also so creative and so magical and beautiful at the same time. And a lot of times you can't really translate that through video. So I'm definitely going to write something very soon, just about everything that happens.
Great, great. Now, when you do this style of journalism, going up and interviewing people, like catching them by surprise, was there any particular one, like with Henry Kissinger or someone, where you were really apprehensive or even afraid of what might happen?
Well, when it comes to fear in my life, I'd rather face it face on. I was scared of heights. I went skydiving. Life is short, and fear is a deterrent from living your life to the fullest. So obviously there's a lot of assessment with risk and if I should do this or if I shouldn't do this. But when it comes to the greater scheme of things, I just look at like how small we are just as a planet compared to our whole galaxy out there, how really insignificant things are, and how there's been a grave injustice and there's no one else who's going to do this, so it has to be me. And if, I mean, what is there to fear? I mean, yeah, there's a lot to fear. there's a lot to fear.
Well, what about in retrospect, like after you'd done it, did you ever say, oh, maybe I went too far, maybe I put myself at risk now?
Well, the first one that I did, was the scariest of all. The first confrontation, the first video I ever made was with Zbigniew Brzezinski, CFR, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group, presidential advisor Jimmy Carter, the man who started Al-Qaeda in 1979, the Mujahideen, the man who traveled to Afghanistan himself and established the Taliban, the Al-Qaeda. Big guy.
Yeah.
I went to his event, and then there's a whole crazy story of how I actually got into the event and how that's going to be in the book.
Yep.
It'll take too long to describe that. But I get into the event, I'm all nervous, finally get up, ask the question, and then I ask my question, the crowd boos, hundreds of people in the crowd, and then he won't answer my question. He's like, next question. So I'm like, went off again, and I called him scum. I was like, you're a scum, sir. Answer the question. He told me to shut up, sit down, so he finally answered the question. I was still filming it. Security guys come. They're like, stop filming. And I'm like, stop disrupting this event. What are you doing? You're interrupting. Stop it. And then they're like, okay, we're coming back with more security guards. They came back with these two huge, big security guards. One got me by the left arm, one got me by the right arm, and I'm being dragged away. And I'm like, holy cow, I just confronted one of the most top elites, and I'm being dragged away by this event, and they're trying to destroy my video footage. Zbigniew Brzezinski's assistant came running by, and she's like, take his camera, take his camera. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? I just pissed off the top, most powerful elite in front of hundreds of people. They're going to destroy this video footage. What are these big guys going to do with me? And I remember when they're holding me up by my arms, and I have my camera here, and they're like trying to grab for my camera and my DV tape, and I'm like swinging it by. I just said, screw it. So I ducked down, spun my head. The security guards hit each other, and I just ran as fast as I could. And then the security guards start giving chase to me. Bam, hit the door, open the door. I start running as fast as I can. And they're running after me. And I'm like, oh my God, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me. Of course they weren't going to kill me, but I was very paranoid when you first get into everything. There's a lot of fear, especially when you get into everything. So I'm running as fast as I could. 6 blocks later, I was able to outrun them. I made a left, I made a right. I tried to just fake it as much as I can. And then I was like, holy cow. And then back on the subway ride, it was more of a feeling of excitement than the fear. But in that moment, yes, there was a lot of fear. But afterwards, it was just the adrenaline rush. And it was, such a powerful video. It's what really started We Are Change. It's what really motivated other people around the country to confront their politician, their congressman. If they see a young Brooklyn punk who barely even spoke proper English because he spoke Brooklynese, just piss off and tell off the most powerful elite person in the world and run away from security guards and was able to do it and is still alive and he's doing it fine. If he could do it, I could do it. and then that started We Are Change. You know,
that's awesome. That's brilliant. That's inspirational, and I love that feeling. Like when I've never had something of that degree, but I know that feeling when you do something which scares the shit out of you, and afterwards you're like, I really did something today.
Same with skydiving, you know, same rush. Zbigniew Brzezinski was a bigger rush, but skydiving comes in close second. Facing that fear, you know, being hit with it. But there's another crazier story like behind of how I actually got to be able to confront that person. But that's a whole nother 10, 15 minute story.
All right.
Too long. We could move on to something else.
Okay. Well, what's your position on anthropogenic climate change? Are you skeptical, or you don't really know, or you think it's a big problem, or where do you stand?
Well, that's when you talk about anthropogenic climate change, what do you mean in detail?
Well, it depends, because there's a lot of definitions and some maybe even fear mongering on the subject. But the main thing people are worried about is if things like fossil fuels, carbon dioxide released into the atmosphere is going to have a huge effect, cause more disastrous events, catastrophic events like cyclones or something, or heat up the planet so much that it's barely livable.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to entertain both sides of the argument. The way I see it is I respect both sides. There's scientists on both sides of the argument. Some people say they're tied into the Koch brothers. Some people say they're tied into the George Soros Foundation. So there's always these two big conflating sides. But I think we could all agree on our environment and our planet is being destroyed. Obviously it is. But my problem is the people who are coming with the solutions are the people who are causing the problems. The multi-billionaires, the U.S. military, the Department of Defense, which is the largest polluter in the world. You never see any major foundation talk about, well, the U.S. military is the largest polluter in the world. The Defense Department is the #1 guy that's, you know, doing all this supposed damage. You don't see any talk about that in any way, shape, or form, which to me is the most interesting part. Obviously, with waste, with planned obsolescence, I think people have it backwards. And I think our environment is very resilient, but it also responds back to what we give it at the same time. So I don't make any definitives. I don't want to be on either one side of the argument. I think there's valid points in both sides of the argument, but I think what I want to concentrate on is, okay, the people who are trying to get the taxes in order, like Al Gore, who has this European company that gets all the tax credits and makes him even richer than he is right now, and has the largest, there's a statistic that he has like the largest or the third biggest house in the U.S. with I'm not exactly sure about that, but he's living a lifestyle that's completely different to what he says he is, and he's offering solutions that only put money into his pockets and only benefit the very few, and don't really make any significant difference when it comes to taking care of their environment. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yep. Well, in Australia, they were doing things like the carbon tax, and when I first heard of that, I was like, what, so you're going to push a bunch of paper around, and that doesn't sound like a solution. Yeah. But there are technologies out there, things like sea sweepers or air sweepers. They get these drones which can pick up poisonous chemicals from the air. Do you think that the private industry is going to have a big effect on how we deal with the environment in a positive way?
It's difficult to say because who's going to pay the private industry to do that? Private industries are usually about more consumer-based and more profit and more bottom line. So it's difficult, but it is really good to see innovation, and it's really good to see individuals who do have the money, who take responsibility for themselves and make this system work a lot better than it should be. There's a lot of people who just take. There's also a lot of people who innovate and give back for the greater good of everybody. So I think there's also there's this duality. So I think the major kind of lesson that I've always learned from journalism is that the truth is always somewhere in the middle. It's not left, it's not right, it's grayish in some kind of matter. It's impossible to predict the future of where it's going, but seeing the advancement of technology, the advancement of communication, the advancement of all this innovative new tools that we're given, I'm very optimistic with what's going to happen with not only the environment, but with society, with people, and just the overall life that we live. We're living right now at a time in history, in recorded history, that's better than any other time before us. There's less deaths, there's less murders, there's less crime, there's less government dictatorships around the world. So that trend is slowly changing, and it's only being escalated by this advancement of technology, which is amazing and beautiful to see, and I'm very optimistic about what's going to happen. And to answer your question, yes, I do believe individuals would take it within themselves, not just their bottom dollar, to help not only the environment, but human society as well.
That's great. Yeah, I'm very optimistic as well. And I remember I watched a video the other day from a few years ago when you were on Occupy Wall Street talking to David Icke, and you were very excited about that spirit of asking questions and horizontal structure, like there's no particular power. How did you like? Looking back now, you're still obviously very optimistic about that. Well, let's see. I'm thinking about how I can phrase this. How else do you think that optimism from something like Occupy Wall Street is going to express itself over the next few years?
Ooh, I wish I had a mystery ball of just like that could just tell me all these answers. I think we're coming to a head. I think there's going to be major changes very soon. How those changes play out is not just dependent on one individual, one organization, but all of us as a whole, all of us as a community, all of us as people of the world. And, you know, you do see a lot of bad stuff, and then you do see a lot of amazing stuff. We're also learning that protests don't work. Protests work in certain aspects, but in the majority, it's really difficult to make a difference just by being out there in the street. It is still important. I still understand the importance of that. But I think the advancement that we're going to see is people who say, okay, we have all these new tools in front of us. The government is not even catching up to all these tools. Let's create a solution outside of government. Let's create a solution outside of the corporate Monsanto, GMO kind of controlled grid system that they have with the laws that are passed through government. So I think the next kind of like spirit, the next kind of like big mass movement, like kind of Occupy Wall Street was, it's going to be people saying, we're opting out. We're going to create our own solutions, and we're not going to bother anyone. Please don't bother us. And I think if enough people do that, that's really when the big transition, the big change will come. And I think right now we could, you know, we're living in a time where I could just Google something and I could learn. I could learn how to be a mechanic right now. I have a problem with my car. I Google my specific car, the problem I have, and the guy on YouTube shows me how to fix it. If I want to become a dentist, you know, which don't do this. Don't recommend you do this. But if you do, you can just look up tutorials on how to be a dentist, or you know. May work out sometimes not to your benefit with that specific case, but the innovation is still just getting on its legs. You know, just like the dentistry analysis, you may not get the best dental care by taking care of yourself dentistry, but the technology, the information is still just starting out to be released, starting out to be expressed in a very professional, well manner. It's not there yet. We're not there where we should be, but we're getting there. So again, don't fix your teeth on YouTube.
Okay. So last week we saw you speak at Acapulco, and it was great. I was really looking forward to seeing you speak, and you definitely didn't disappoint. I was really excited to see that. Now, obviously, something like Acapulco, in terms of scale, it's only a few hundred people. But how do you think it compares in the vibe or the quality of people or their personal attributes compared to something like Occupy Wall Street?
Well, there's always a different branch of you know, people at all these different kinds of events. Occupy Wall Street was like a big kind of like mixed salad of every kind of ideology that you could ever think of, where anarchists, minarchists, socialists, communists, leftists, Democrats, Republicans, Tea Party. Like at first it was just like, here we are. Here's all of us. And then kind of as it more went on, the more left kind of leaning ideologies kind of took progression. So it depends on what kind of Occupy Wall Street you're referring to. If you're referring from the early on where it's just people who wanted a difference, or later on where the kind of left kind of made it more a center point of that issue. But I think at first, Occupy Wall Street was a lot of people who weren't even involved in politics, who weren't even socialists, who weren't even communists, who weren't even libertarians, who weren't even anarchists, people who were just like, crap, we need to change something. We're screwed. We're getting screwed. There's no, like, I'm not going to be vulgar. I was going to be vulgar. No, I'm not going to do that.
Go ahead.
We're being fucked. There's no condom on. Like, what the fuck is happening? Like, we got to do something. Like, stop it. Like, stop. And then people came together. And when you go to events like Acapulco, it's like, okay, we're getting screwed, but let's stop getting screwed as well. So you have that kind of similarity, obviously. Obviously, it's more centered towards one particular ideology at Anarchapulco. It's centered towards anarchy, libertarianism. So you have that strong ideology. So that's the major difference. But what brings us together, it's like, hey, we're getting fucked. Let's stop. You know. Let's stop the fucking.
Yeah, I think it's great when, you know, people might have different ideologies, but they get together, ask each other questions, and you know, just try to get to the bottom of everything.
Yeah, which is most important. It's like whatever ideology, whatever you paint yourself as, we're all human beings, and we're all trying to, you know, live a better life, not just for ourselves, but for everybody.
Cool.
We're all human.
Yeah, totally. Cool. I think I'm out of questions. Thanks for doing what you... Oh, actually, I do have one more question. I was thinking, like Jeff Berwick the other day said you were one of his heroes. You're definitely an inspiration to me. What figures, like historically or your contemporaries, would you name as your heroes or your inspirations?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, there's so many, whether it's like Malcolm X or MLK or Gandhi, which had many faults of their own. They're not perfect individuals as well, but the ideas that they stood for, the ideas that they put out there, I think are the most important, of just nonviolence, peaceful resistance, coming together as human beings. I think the transition of Malcolm X from where he came from where he started off and where he came to at the end of his life is extremely, extremely, extremely important, encompassing just the overall idea that we got to fix this together and stop being divided and conquered and come together as one, fix the wrongs in this world. So, you know, just those three individuals inspired me tremendously. Reading about them in high school and junior high school, reading their autobiographies has been very, very inspiring.
Great. Okay, fantastic. Thanks so much, Luke, and thanks for speaking at Acapulco, and thanks for asking the important questions, which is something we can all learn from. Let's try that again. All right, thanks.
Like, subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, send us a tweet at BattleAZ at